released yet by the Justice Department. We obtained this list of names through sources. Leon?
Well, it may not be officially released by the Justice Department, but it's about to be officially released by CNN. As I'm just now learning from our producers that this entire list is going to be available on CNN.com. So folks out there in the audience, if you would like to see the names that are on this list, the 18 names that officials are now, or will be officially saying at some point this morning or sometime today, are the suspects that they expect, that they believe were on the planes themselves and died in the crashes. Those names will be available on CNN.com. Kelly, before we let you go, is there any other information being released aside from the names? Is there any information, for instance, about where they have been, where they came from, if they have been residing here in the U.S. before this incident? Any other information like that?
Well, besides the information that we gave you, we do know that many of them have trained and were licensed pilots, trained at U.S. flight schools and were licensed pilots. And we do know that many of them either resided together at various locations here in the U.S., many in Florida. I said one here in Virginia. But we do have some more on the ongoing investigation, Leon, if you're curious. We did tell you last night that we had several people that were arrested at New York airports at both JFK and LaGuardia. Well, we are told now that after intense questioning by FBI members of the Joint Terrorism Task Force that all but one of those people has been released. We also know that in Miami's airport, sources say that law enforcement detained several people there. One woman was seen walking into the airport in civilian clothing, went into the restroom, came out in a flight attendant uniform. She was with a man who also had a flight attendant uniform. When they were approached by authorities, they ran, but they were captured and they are now being questioned. And we also know that the U.S. Coast Guard has boarded a Carnival Cruise Line ship off the coast of Miami earlier today. They detained two people who authorities describe as having a history of hijacking. According to law enforcement sources, that ship was boarded at 3 a.m. after the passenger list was checked by authorities. So this manhunt continues, Leon, around the country.
And let me ask you one final question, if I may. You said, going back to the case in New York, you said it was 10 or 11 that had been detained originally, and only one now is still being detained?
Well, our sources last night had said at least 8 people had been detained, and that number has gone back and forth. But they were questioned. They have been released, except for one. But
the question is that one believed to be in any way linked to the incidents that happened Tuesday?
It's very early to tell, Leon, in this investigation. Sometimes there's a suspected link, but many times it proves to be nothing. And I think that law enforcement has yet to determine that for themselves.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Kelly Arena, thank you very much for getting that list to us. Darren, over to you.
We want to get more on this list, and if you're just joining us, we're talking about a list of 18 people that authorities believe were involved, were on board those planes that were hijacked and crashed on Tuesday. Our Mike Betcher is with us here in Atlanta. He's also working on the list, and as Leon was alluding to, Mike, I would imagine beyond the list of names and what small connections are able to make to these planes, like rental cars and plane tickets, authorities are going to want to know a lot more, as in their activities that were leading up to their getting on those planes on Tuesday.
Well, absolutely, and they want to know a lot more about what groups these people belong to. In the intelligence agencies in this country, they have lists of people who they believe belong to certain groups. And I am told by intelligence sources that they believe that the lead groups in this incident, in this terrorist attack in New York and Washington, the lead group, they're looking very closely at Egyptian Islamic Jihad and other North African groups. They haven't completely made that link, but they're looking very, very closely at this. They'll be checking this, cross-referencing these names against names known to be members of these various groups. The chief person in Egyptian Islamic Jihad, Mr. Zarari, is a top lieutenant of Osama bin Laden. He appeared with him in a photograph more than a year ago at a meeting in Afghanistan. This group has been linked to other terrorist attacks around the world in association with the Al-Qaeda group. And always remember, Al-Qaeda itself is not an organized group organized to carry out terrorist attacks. It's primarily an umbrella group. What they do is bring in other groups in other parts of the world They sit as sort of the corporate board, and they have these smaller companies that actually go out there and do their work, these smaller companies being terrorist groups like Egyptian Islamic Jihad. Also, we know that bin Laden, over the last couple of years, or more than that, has been really reaching out to Algerian terrorist groups. He's used them in a number of attacks against the United States. They will be checking that list for those names as well. Now, something to be careful with in this list is the fact that some of these people are listed to have certain passports. For example, Mohammed Atta is known to have carried a United Arab Emirates passport, but they're looking closely that he may not be a UAE citizen, that he may be from Egypt or some other North African country. They'll be looking at those things as well. People are racing to go through this list and make sense of it and really try to get to the bottom of the identities of these people.
Mike, what about what would be perhaps the next list? If these were 18 people who were on board those planes, they couldn't have carried out this operation by themselves. They had to have supporters, they had to have handlers. Do authorities believe that those people would still be in this country?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And there is yet a second list out there that has been distributed around the country to airlines and airports that has people that they suspect might be people who've provided support to these 18. Now, when a person books a ticket, for example, or travels in some other means or is stopped by police, they will be cross-checked against this list to see if they're on it. Now, some people on that list have already been cleared, but there are many others who have not been found, and they're out looking for them now.
All right, Mike Boettcher, thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to be learning a lot more as the morning goes on, so we'll be checking back with you. Also, a reminder for our viewers, the entire list of the 18 suspects can be found on our website at CNN.com, so just go ahead and log in there and you can check it out for yourself.
Well, I just did. I just logged in and I just checked it out, and I want to advise folks that when you do go there, you're going to find that you'll see all of the names grouped with the flights that investigators think that each of the hijackers were on. That is American Airlines flights 11 and 77 and United Airlines flights 175 and 93. So they're all grouped together there on CNN.com, so make sure you go there and check it out. Let's go now to Washington. CNN's Eileen O'Connor standing by there. Eileen?
Well, Leon, I have a lot of details that we've gleaned from document checks and cross-checks of documents over the last few days as we've been getting information from law enforcement sources up and down the East Coast of the United States and all over the United States. First of all, let us start with Mohammed Atta. This is a man who many of these men are linked through. Mohammed Atta is listed on American Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. American 11 was the first plane to hit the World Trade Center. He rented a car that was later found at Logan Airport. That is what put authorities onto him. He held U.S. and Egyptian driver's license. He had a passport that was the United Arab Emirates, but we are being told by officials in that government that he is not a citizen of that country. Law enforcement sources tell me that they are operating under the assumption that these UAE passports may well be false. There apparently is a big problem with that identification being false. His latest residence was in Coral Springs, Florida, and in Hamburg, Germany. And he attended flight schools at Huffman Aviation in Venice, Florida, Sim Center in Opa-locka, Florida. We were there yesterday. He also, according to sources, attended another flight school in Palm Beach and possibly an additional flight school to get some refresher courses very recently. Now, he is also linked to a man, two brothers, Walid al-Shehri and Marwan al-Shehri. Now, these are both men who would appear to be Saudi by their last name. This is a Saudi name that, in fact, is from a tribe that fought in Afghanistan in the 80s and 90s, which could bring you to a link to Osama bin Laden. Now, also, as you know, Osama bin Laden is originally of Saudi nationality. So this is where you're seeing the evidence that the United States government is saying they have linking this to Osama bin Laden. Now, the al-Shehris, we know from German authorities that Marwan al-Shehri lived in Germany, in Hamburg, with Mohammed Atta. As I said, Mohammed Atta was listed on Flight 11, Boston to Los Angeles. But Marwan was listed on United 175. That was Boston to Los Angeles. That plane was the one that hit the second World Trade Center tower. Marwan attended those same flight schools along with Mohammed Atta. And as you know, his cousin, Waleed, was also associated with these two men. He attended a flight school, Embry-Riddle University in Daytona Beach, another flight school. He was on board Flight 11 with Mohammed Atta. So we now know that the pilots, the probable pilots of those two planes out of Boston, all had extensive flight training in schools in Florida that the authorities have been working on. These are the alleged pilots. We don't know how many pilots might have been aboard the plane. All of these men listed here could have had the ability to fly those planes. Now, these men are also linked to some of the men on the list. For instance, another man named Al-Omari, who is on the list, Abuhim Al-Omari. He was linked to a flight school in Vero Beach. Police had gone to that flight school. It's called Flight Safety International. Neighbors have said that this man was at Flight Safety International. But a next-door neighbor of his, taken into custody for questioning, we know through his lawyer, has told the FBI that Al-Omari is actually safe in Saudi Arabia and should be presenting himself to U.S. officials in that country. We were told he would be presenting himself yesterday. And they are claiming, those associates of Al-Omari who are in custody, one associate of Al-Omari, is claiming that all of this associating to them is a case of mistaken identity. So we must tell viewers that while there are names on this list, it could be that they are perhaps stolen identity. Leon?
All right, Eileen O'Connor, thank you very much. Just beginning the process of gleaning through this information that's just now becoming available to us. Eileen O'Connor in Washington. Darren?
We're going to get some help in understanding the information on this list that we're getting so far. We're going to bring in Peter Bergen. He is a terrorism expert, also a CNN consultant. Peter, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
Have you had a chance to look at this list yourself?
Quick review of this list with somebody familiar with certain Middle Eastern names, and particularly Saudi names, reveals that about half of the people on this list have distinctive Saudi tribal names. A lot of them are from the southwest area of Saudi Arabia, abutting Yemen. As you undoubtedly know, bin Laden is not only a Saudi citizen, but his family originated in Yemen. A lot of Yemenis moved from Yemen to Saudi Arabia in the past century. So you're seeing that probably about half the people on this list are Saudi. You're seeing a couple of Yemenis. And then a further thing which I think is important, a source familiar with the bin Laden organization told me just recently, in fact a few weeks ago, that veterans, bin Laden veterans returning to Saudi Arabia from Afghanistan have been talking about some big action that was planned in coming weeks. Now, at the time, my source felt that it might be in Saudi Arabia. Now it appears, of course, that it was in the United States. Darren.
Also, that also brings the question, if people were hearing that weeks ago, why wouldn't U.S. intelligence sources pick up on that as well?
Well, U.S. intelligence sources did sort of pick up on it, but we, you know, like every human being, we always tend to see things through the prism of the last event that happened. And there were warnings in Saudi Arabia. For instance, July 18th, the State Department released a warning of imminent and specific threats against U.S. targets in Saudi Arabia. There was also a closing of the embassy in Yemen in June. There was also arrests of people in New Delhi. So there was attention in the Middle East, but not in the United States.
I want to follow up on a couple of points that you made here, Peter. First of all, you were pointing out that you think that some of the names on this list are Yemenis. Yemen brings to mind the attack on the USS Cole, and I can't help but make the association between that attack and what's now happened here in the U.S.
Well, indeed, and of course the Cole was an unprecedented attack. The embassy bombings in Africa were also unprecedented. This organization does the unexpected. It's not where the United States thought the attack was going to come. Clearly, as I mentioned, there were indications an attack was in the offing. The United States government was prepared for it in the Middle East, but obviously not here. Darren.
Also, I think we're learning slowly as we follow this story not to just see things in terms of black and white, and one point doesn't necessarily lead to another. This attack did not come with a return address, is one way that I've heard it said. So that when you look down a list like this and you see what you say are Saudi names or Yemenis names, that does that or does that not necessarily mean a link with those particular countries, or do you have to be careful not to make that association?
Well, I think there are various countries in the world where it's a lot easier to get a false passport from. I'm not very familiar with how easy it is to obtain a Saudi passport, but I would guess it's fairly difficult. So, I mean, some of these passports may be fake, some not, but the point is that the names on these passports are at least Saudi tribal names, which does seem to bring it back again.